It was easy to write off Deandre Ayton's media day comments as being in a bad mood, being somber about Robert Sarver. Any of us would have understood that. But on day one of NBA training camp, on Suns training camp, day one, he brought it back. He doubled down, and he really called into question his relationship with head coach Monty Williams. What does this mean, and whose fault is it? On today's episode of Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 5 seasons and a writer at Suns.com and Dime Magazine. Thank you to everybody making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Wednesday. A ton to talk about. Suns basketball is back, for better or worse. I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's bad. That's for you all to decide, but I appreciate you locking in with me every single step of the way. We're back to 5 days a week. We've been back to 5 days a week for a couple of weeks now, and the show's there for you. So hit follow, hit subscribe. Make sure you do not miss an episode. We're on YouTube. That's the best way to support the show, but also every single podcast platform, Google, Apple, Spotify, you name it, we're there. Do not miss it. Deandre Ayton. I hoped maybe too optimistically that yesterday we could leave it behind, move on from the way that he appeared to act at media day. And again, maybe it's a mood. Maybe it's Robert Sarver. Maybe it's just he doesn't want to talk to the media. It was a rough summer. It was a confusing summer. It was a stressful summer, I'm sure, for Ayton. Any of us might have had reasons not to want to talk to the media, talk about those things, relive all of it. But today, day one of Suns training camp, I was not there, but no one could have missed these videos. They were national news. They were memes. They were everything, and it got pretty tense. So I want to read a couple of select quotes from Monty and from Ayton because it was mostly centering on their relationship, but I'll start with DA. He was asked about the communication line, basically, between himself and the coach since their falling out in Game 7 when Ayton obviously became visibly frustrated, as did Monty, after Monty checked him out with less than 30 minutes played in that Game 7. Ayton said, I haven't spoken to Monty. We haven't spoken at all ever since the game, but I'm here. If he was happy in Phoenix, he said, I'm all right. He said, when I'm between lines now, I just work. I'm not playing for myself. And I have an organization across my chest and a name on my back that I have to represent. I'm just here to work. And then when he was asked what he would want to say to Monty or what he hopes to potentially say to Monty if they are able to talk, he said, quote, I can show him better than I can tell him. All right. So that was the Ayton side. And I recommend watching the videos if you haven't seen them because it wasn't just what he said. It was very much how he said it, long pauses between words, communicating with his, a stare that could pierce through, a bank safe, a bank vault. And so you just have to see it to get it fully. But he was asked, Monty was asked about it afterward because he spoke right after Ayton. And he basically shrugged it off completely. I haven't talked to a number of guys. I'll talk to everybody as I do during training camp all the time. And then he said it won't be an issue at all. But that was like the main quote. But I want to draw attention to one other portion of what Monty said because he was asked about, if he appreciates the idea that Ayton wants to show what his intentions are rather than just speaking about them, right? And there's something legitimate to that, right? There's something admirable to that to a degree if it's done with the right intentions. And Monty said a couple of things. He said, you can blow it out of proportion in so many ways when you lose a game like that. And I refuse to do that. Now, that's not verbatim. I'm not telling you that was a quote, but most of that was a quote if you just go back and watch. And that was interesting because the question wasn't about Game 7. It was about, again, Ayton showing rather than telling. And Monty returned it back to game 7. So that's clearly what's still at the core of the problem. It's what happened in that game and in the lead up to that game as the Suns season fell apart, how both guys responded in that moment and the problems that created, and then the lack of communication and mending of bridges since then, right? It's all of that. But it's very clear that it was an inflection point. So when I hear this, where my mind goes is back to where it was when the Suns ended up matching the offer sheet for Ayton, bringing him back, confirming, reaffirming that he was going to be a Sun in 2022 for at least some portion of this season. And maybe it's going to be shorter now than we thought. But that week, I spent it was basically Ayton week on Locked On Suns. And I stand by what my perspective was on it at the time, which is there's no more excuses for not treating this guy in a real way, not bringing him in as a real member of this team, as a real factor, a real talent, a real voice on this team. And what I mean by that is not holding him to his worst moments in terms of, the suspension in year 2 or some of the way that he's carried himself, the things that he's said in the past, missing the COVID test in the bubble. There were all these things that I think you could have challenged Ayton on, and they've become way less frequent. I don't know what happens behind the scenes, but he's not making these huge public mistakes the way that you might have accused him of in the past. He's improved his game. He's sacrificed. He's committed to his role, and he's won at a high level and impacted big-time games, big-time moments. And so maybe even with all of that said, if you look at the future and you don't expect that he's going to be here long-term, well, we're all human. It was natural to not feel like that guy is a core part of what you're building. I mean, we've all experienced coworkers and family members who feel like they have one foot out the door. And if Ayton felt that way, or if the front office was treating it as if it was a given that he would be gone, by this point, basically prior to his second track time, it would have made sense to treat him that way. Right? It wouldn't have been right. It wouldn't have been good or nice or kind, but you could get it, right? But when you decide to bring him back, you have to drop all of that, right? You're committing. The front office, whether they intended to do it all along or not, and I don't think they did. I do think they explored trades. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is they brought him back. They matched that offer sheet in 3 minutes or whatever their show-off amount of time was that they wanted all of us to let us all know. This time is for Monty to unleash Ayton. I mean, to the extent that he's ready for, to the extent that he can handle. And I do think there's tension about where that line is. I get that. But you can't have these training wheels. You can't treat him like somebody who's a role player, who's, not ready to be given opportunities, etc., because he's making the money and he's now been, committed to financially by this team. And so there's a point in that when it's like you just both have to set your swords down and make good and move forward. And I think that's Monty. I think that's Chris Paul. I think that those two specifically in terms of the offense and the opportunities that Ayton can get, which I do think is the crux of what he wants. The Pacers are they're not a good team, right? They're not a team that anyone in the NBA would get excited about playing for unless it meant more opportunity. We saw that with Tyrese Halliburton, for instance, right? It was an opportunity for him to take a franchise, be the lead playmaker, and prove himself and build something. And I think Ayton felt optimistic about being able to do that. He does not feel that here. And I think that's mostly because of Monty and Chris, but I also don't think other people are off the hook, okay? I think you have to be realistic that, the way that Mikhail, Devin, Booker, Cam Johnson, all these guys are the way that they think of him. And I think it's just this tangled mess at a certain point because he's been here so long, because these guys all have such a history. This is what happens to teams that try and fail to win. It's hard to be close to people and win with people and trust people for this long. And I think a lot of that is also coming home to roost, right? It's Booker the way that he might think of DA, having seen the immaturity and everything else and seen the lack of development and everything. It's these other guys who feel like they have to pump up Ayton, even if they're lower on the totem pole than he is. And I'm not going to speak to what's true within that, what's realistic within that, what's honest within that. But I can tell you, having been around this team, having asked questions, gotten questions answered about all of these mechanisms between all of these people, that's what the role of Ayton is there. It's sacrifice, it's settle down, it's do whatever you need to do to help us win, but it's not ask for more, be a leader, get rewarded in the same ways that it is for everybody else. Now, I'm not letting Ayton off the hook because I don't think where we are now, it's necessarily the most professional or productive thing to do to, be so forthcoming with the media, make this dirty laundry public. But it's undeniable that these people are impeding him from feeling his best, his most satisfied, his most productive self as an athlete, as a person, as a teammate. And the day they signed that extension offer sheet and matched it and brought him back was the last day where it was okay to treat him that way. For better or worse, he's here. He needs to be treated like he matters and like he's a part of this thing, and he just isn't. And I get why he's mad, and you're seeing that bubble up now. This isn't just panic, though, okay? Yes, you could continue, if you're the most rosy-eyed person out there, to make the case that this is just frustration, and once people get on the basketball court, that this is going to be something that Ayton can maybe channel into breaking out of his shell and playing. But any hope for a breakout requires everybody to be on the same page, and it's clear that's not the case right now. We'll talk about that next. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by BetOnline. Every single pro and college football game for the rest of the fall, BetOnline is going to be the place to go. I don't know what else to tell you. They have odds, they have props, they have lines on every single big game, every single pro game. I'm not going to promise you that they have the Grand Canyon flag football team or whatever. I'm not going to get you there, but here's what I can prove for you is that the Cardinals are struggling. I'm scrolling quite a bit of the way down to get to Cardinals Super Bowl odds. Plus 6,600. They are behind the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Cleveland Browns, the Indianapolis Colts, the Dallas Cowboys. I will not go on, but it's not just game odds is the point, guys. It's futures, it's playoffs, it's team wins, it's Super Bowl. All of it is available at BetOnline already. So find the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles analysis on every single game to make sure you are up to the minute and informed before you make any bet. Head to betonline.net, guys, or use their mobile app to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. What's happening between Deandre Ayton and Mikal Bridges and Monty Williams is real. I need you all to understand that. I need you all to believe that, because you do not see either of these people act the way that they're acting. So if you are still somebody who is convincing themselves that this is nothing, that this will be gone by the first time they tip off at center court against, don't forget, the Dallas freaking Mavericks on opening night, that's not insignificant here, considering we're still talking about Game 7, I don't know, 5 months later, right? This is not nothing. And the media reaction or some of the fan reaction to this is not a panic, okay? It feels like people are being naive here. And the way that I see this, I've seen a lot of hope that this can be the kick in the butt that Ayton needs to go out and play at an even higher level, leave all of the crap as crap, and put his head down. I think to a certain extent that's true. You're hearing that in the words that he's saying. He can show his level of commitment or his level of intensity more than he can tell it. He just wants to, represent the right thing. I think the key quote, and I keep coming back to this on yesterday's show and today's show, is to move on from the baby steps and just show what he can do. And I think that is what his plan is right now, right? He knows he has to be here. But if you're hoping for the biggest possible breakout, let's say before we knew anything about Deandre Ayton's problems, his communication and relationship with Monty Williams, any of that, if you were just optimistically doing a breakdown of what Ayton's best case scenario this season was going to look like, it was going to require a pretty substantial role change, right? And I think Monty, to his credit, did speak to that in some ways on Media Day. In the NBA TV interview he did on TV, as well as to us media in the normal press conference environment, he talked about more operating at the elbow, shooting more threes, adding new wrinkles to the offense, etc. But even that was going to require adaptation by everybody, because this offense, this team, has operated in a very clear, very consistent way for 2 years. Devin Booker and Chris Paul are going to initiate offense mostly in the pick and roll. They're going to create for themselves and for their teammates that way. And then everybody's going to buckle down and play good, disciplined team defense to limit easy shots for the opponent and turn defense into offense, right? That's in a nutshell the elevator pitch for why the Suns have been so good the past couple of years. Changing that, even if it's just a few more elbow touches for Ayton, a few more threes for Ayton, these are things the Suns have not done. So it would have been, and it will be if it still happens, a pretty sizable change. The problem is, it's hard to change the structure of your team when everybody involved seems to be at odds with each other. Right? I mean, that's the end of the process of changing. The means to that end, if you're talking about Ayton taking on more, was going to be film, practice time, the creation of new plays, the communication that goes into what's comfortable here. Is this working? Who's going to do what role within some of these new sets? Is it something we can just put into what we've already been doing, or does it need to be changed? Who's going to sacrifice here? Because again, when you do it for 2 years and you're very successful, if one person does more, somebody else is doing less, right? And so that all felt possible, and maybe it still is, but that's not something you do with people who you don't trust, who you don't have an open line of communication with, who you don't feel like you can confide in, who you don't feel like are looking out for your best interest. These are all things that we all know in our everyday lives, and they're just very difficult to do in that case. And so it's hard for me to look at what's going on right now and feel like this is something that's going to be channeled into some sort of breakout season for Ayton. I don't know. We're a long way from that, right? And I think if we're being honest with ourselves, this is going to last as long as Chris Paul and Monty Williams are resistant to change. I want to reiterate, Ayton needs to handle all of this more professionally than he is. And I think he's going to, every time he speaks to media the whole season, reiterate how unhappy and bothered he is? Probably not. No, I don't expect him to do that. I do think there's a certain level of distraction that can come with a new season, competing, getting back into the routine and the swing of things. We're seeing that in Brooklyn right now. They're all trying their best to just move forward with the basketball season and let bygones be bygones. I think there will be some of that. But I do think even this little bit of problem that he's caused, and you know there's probably even more behind the scenes. If this is something he's willing to take public, then you can rest assured it's coming out in the private behind the scenes situations. I don't know how. I don't know what that looks like, but I would bet that that's happening. And that's on him. It's on him to cope and move forward and be professional. And if it is something where he ends up needing to be traded, he doesn't feel like he can make this work, well, there's a deadline for that. It can't happen right now. So maybe you move very quickly to, do I need to stay at home like Jay Crowder is? Do I need to, make it work, figure out a way to adjust until that point and get on the court and try to help this team win, and then just count my days down until January 15th. I don't know what that is for him. He needs to do that. But I think if you're looking at how this gets better without a trade or a holdout or whatever the worst case is here, anything short of that, I put on Chris Paul and Monty Williams. And I'll tell you why next. First, one more quick break. So from Ben Simmons to Jaylen Brown to Deandre Ayton, I think one of the lessons of this NBA offseason is second and third wheels getting scapegoated, getting caught in the crossfire of this era of the NBA, which is keep making trades until you can get a superstar. And once you have a superstar, keep tinkering with everybody that's around them until you can win a championship with those players. That's what it is to be an NBA front office right now. And when you're the Joel Embiid, when you're the Devin Booker, when you are the LeBron James, it's pretty nice to be those guys. This era works for you if you're those guys. It doesn't work for the second and third wheels who aren't those superstars and who the churn ultimately is going to come for, right? You can try out a Jay Crowder. You can try out a Landry Shamet. You can focus on developing your Mikal Bridges and your Cam Johnson. If you don't win, you're not going to trade Devin Booker, right? You're not going to trade Jason Tatum. You're not going to trade Joel Embiid. But you might trade the other guys. You might trade Ben Simmons or Jaylen Brown or Deandre Ayton. And it's very easy to put everything on them when that knowledge is in the back of your head, right? And so I feel like Ayton can be put into that pattern. We saw Jaylen Brown get put into Kevin Durant trade rumors where he then tweets out SMH. And you can imagine there was some difficult conversations behind closed doors related to that snafu on the part of Boston's front office. Ben Simmons obviously gets thrown under the bus by his teammates and his head coach, and then sits out for a season as a result. And then Ayton, I don't think it's all about the scapegoating, but I think if Game 7 had gone differently, he would have been able to make it through the contract stuff, because that was always going to be hard. There was difficult contract stuff all the way last fall, right, when he didn't get his extension. He committed. He came. He never seemed to have a bad attitude. He was a team player. He was happy to be there. He was everybody's normal Deandre Ayton for all of last season, right? Until now. And the difference is how Game 7 went and potentially his involvement with the Durant stuff and the fact that the Suns were very clearly not prioritizing bringing him back at any salary, let alone what he wanted, right? But what I will say, setting aside Boston and Philadelphia now, I don't want to speak to those situations too deeply because I don't know the intricacies, but I know the intricacies here. And if you're going to scapegoat someone in sports, what I would say is make sure your case is sound, right? Deandre Ayton's not even close to the top of my list of reasons that the Suns lost to Dallas. Now, we can go back in time and people were clamoring for Ayton to score on when the Mavs went small and this and that to make more of a difference on switches against Luka. I watched every minute of that series. Do I think Ayton was at the best that he could have been? No, I'm not going to be naive. I'm not going to lie to you. But I think he held up on Luka pretty well. I think he is somebody who we know can score against small ball when he gets the ball, right? And the Mavs weren't exactly attacking the rim. So I think he was neutralized defensively a little bit in terms of like protecting the rim, doing what he does as the anchor of the defense. That's not something that was afforded to him because the Mavs went super small, spread the floor, bombed threes, and let Luka go to work. Okay, so if he's not really able to have his usual impact and he's not getting the ball to even get the chance to score like he was against, say, New Orleans, and all the other stuff he's doing relatively well. Could he have rebounded better? Yeah, that's probably my biggest thing. But come on, we're going to blame Deandre Ayton's rebounding as the reason that they got blown to smithereens a bunch of times? No. If you're picking a scapegoat, make sure your case is sound. I'm not the type that thinks one person is to blame at all. But if I'm picking one person, again, it's not Deandre Ayton. It's probably going to be Chris Paul, right? Like, I don't feel like it's out of bounds to say that. I don't feel like it's out of bounds to say that at all. Chris Paul fouled out of one of these games, was in foul trouble in another one of these games, had countless ridiculous turnovers, including some of them on those fouls when he was throwing himself around and getting offensive fouls and everything else. He was not an offensive threat whatsoever, attacking Dallas's defense in any way, shape, or form. He was completely carved out and spit out by Luka Doncic and Jalen Brunson when they were able to attack him and his defense. Now, again, I'm not the type who thinks one person is the problem. Cam Payne was shredded up defensively. Cam Johnson was shredded up defensively. Mikal was not himself. I get all that. Okay, I'm not saying Chris Paul is the reason, but I guess what I'm saying is if one of the people restricting Deandre Ayton played worse than him in the games that ended up being the inflection point for Ayton's comfort with the organization, I'd be training my eye a little bit more and paying a little bit more attention toward the guy who's playing that role in all of this, who did not play up to his normal standard, who is the reason that the team is operating in such a strict, constricted way, and who is and is somewhat to blame for the lack of development opportunities for the other guys. Now, again, all of this is so complicated. I called it a tangled web earlier, and I think that's fair, right? It's all easy to say now when it didn't work, but nobody was complaining about Chris Paul bringing structure and development of the team overall when he launched them into title contention, right? Or when they're winning a franchise record of regular season games. I wasn't here complaining about that stuff. But if I'm Ayton, maybe I was thinking about those things before. And it's totally fair that losing in a very high profile way is going to make me second guess those things. And if I'm also being blamed for some of those failures and I'm looking around saying, hold on, I was doing what I was asked to do. I was doing that at a very high level. And yeah, did I play my best? No. But am I looking around at a room full of anyone else who played their best in games 3 through 7 against Dallas? No. So hold on a second. Why am I still the guy that's the punching bag, the scapegoat, the guy who's on the trade block, the guy who the team won't commit any money to? How's that me? Right? And they did commit money to him, but they didn't want to originally, and they negotiated and tried to get their way around paying him what he thought he was worth. Why am I in that situation, right? If I'm Ayton, I'm looking at that and saying, hold on, this needs to change. And, again, culprits numbers 1 and 2 are Chris Paul and Monty Williams. They run this ship. I think Booker has a lot of input. If he wasn't comfortable, he would have made it known. He will make it known. If anything changes with Booker, you can bet that it will have a ripple effect that matters in this franchise. But in terms of the structure, the reasons that Ayton has not gotten the opportunities that he wants, the people that are on him the most, that's Chris Paul and Monty Williams. And if this is going to work, it's going to be on them to make it work. Maybe nobody cares. Maybe everybody feels like it's sour milk at this point and forget it. We'll trade him the minute we can. That ship has sailed, move on. But that's going to be a lot of ugliness going forward. And I think we're in for some more ugliness. I haven't closed the book completely on this being salvageable, but I'm 60, 70, 80% of the way there. Because this is not something that started today. It's not just people panicking. And it's a bed that the Suns made. Now they have to lay in it. I don't know what else to say. More throughout the week. Aaron Edwards will be here. He was supposed to be here for this show. His brakes broke, which I guess is how you have to say that. But car trouble, he'll be back. I'm sure this team will keep farting out drama, so we will be here to break it all down. A big thanks for making Locked On Suns your first listen. To catch up on all of it, now go make Locked On NBA your second listen. for everything else going on around the league.